Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. Today we have an art journal tutorial. I'm going to use Inktense Blocks as my major color medium, and I'm going to showcase multiple stencil techniques. So this stencil is called Scalloped Mandala, and I am going to put gesso, thick gesso, through this stencil. This is stencil technique number 1. And I'm using, for the first time, this silicone brush. I've had this for a long time and really never used it, but that's going to change because this worked so well. It allowed me to get a nice coat of thick gesso through it, and it didn't seep under the stencil, which is often what happens when I'm applying it with my finger or a makeup sponge. I love putting thickened gesso through stencils. It adds a subtle amount of texture, not as much as modeling paste, so it doesn't bulk up your pages as much. And this makes it so easy. Now, I'm working on my 9x12 Canson mixed media page, and I've taken it off the coils to make it easy to work on. Now, what I didn't do on this page, which I 99% of the time do, is gesso the page to prime it. And I should have. Because what I end up doing on this page would have benefited from having that coat of gesso to seal the page and to turn it into a non-porous surface. But there'll be more about that coming up. So I'm going to put the gesso through the stencil in 3 different places. Look how easy it is using this silicone brush. I am going to try putting modeling paste, use this silicone brush to apply modeling paste to the stencil and see if that doesn't work, how that works. I'll be sure to let you know. Now you can see the 3 stenciled areas with modeling paste, and I set this aside and I gave it some dry time while I got busy doing other things. Now that it's dry, I'm putting the stencil back over it, lining it up, and I'm going to do the second technique, which is stamping through the stencil. This is Breathe Darling. It's a Ciao Bella stamp, and I picked the script stamp because I want stamping that is fairly fine in nature. Now for a stencil, you want something that has open spaces, like these petals that you see me stamping through. You don't want a very fine, detailed stencil. That wouldn't showcase this technique very well. Here I wanted to add interest to these elements. So I'm stamping right on top of the gesso that I've applied. And I'm stamping with black archival paint, or ink, sorry. I'm not stamping through all the stencil. I'm selecting the bigger areas and just kind of random, really. So that one I did 3 different areas. So again, I'm lining up the stencil with the thickened gesso that I've applied and then stamping through the stencil. Today when I sat down at my table, I just wanted to play. I had no idea where this page was going. I didn't have any idea. I just saw this stencil. I thought, okay, let's try the stencil. Let's put gesso through the stencil. And each step as I do it kind of directs the next step somewhat. Or you make those decisions when you get to it. Don't think that you have to have it all figured out before you start. Sometimes I find that the pages go together much easier when you don't have a defined idea about where you want it to go. This way I'm just open to whatever pot comes my way. And maybe that makes me more creative. So there you can see all the stamping detail. So we have texture, we've got pattern. Now we're going to add color. And to add color, I'm going to use my Inktense Blocks. And I've picked out 3 colors. This is a winning color combination, the yellow, the teal, and burnt sienna. And I'm just rubbing them on the paper and spraying water and blending them. Now, here's why you wanted to have a coat of gesso underneath everything. Because there isn't anything that has sealed the paper, turned it into a non-porous surface. The water and the color is soaking into the paper instead of staying on top, which makes it more difficult to blend, and it just gets so much wetter. So I'm fighting that a little bit here. Now with the Inktense blocks, typically I do end up layering or adding more depth of color and applying it once or twice or 3 times, I should say. So I keep going here, applying the color, blending it. Some of it's not blending as much as I want it because it's soaking into the paper, because I did not seal the paper. So here's my workaround. I'm using a layer of clear gesso. This one's from Crafter's Workshop. It goes on cloudy, but it dries clear. And that is going to seal the page. I'm using clear gesso right now instead of white gesso because I don't want to lose the color that I've already put down. So once this dries, I'm going to come back and I'm going to be adding another layer of color with my blocks. And here's what me doing that. So now the water, instead of soaking into the paper, is staying on top of the paper and allowing me to blend more easily. And because this is the second layer of color, the colors are more vibrant. So I'm just adding color, blending it with my finger and water, adjusting as I see fit, just following my instincts. Because I don't know what focal image I'm going to do, I don't even know if I'm going to go portrait or landscape on this at this point. I'm just having fun with the colors. And here, you know, once you get it dripping, it's going to get caught into those nooks and crannies of the thick gesso that we've put through the stencil in wonderful, wonderful ways. So it's going to bring out some of that texture, some of that pattern. And you can see how much brighter these colors have become as I've put the second layer, and they're not soaking into the paper. This is a winning color combination: burnt sienna, yellow, and teal. Every one of those colors, when they blend with another one, they make another interesting tone and just adds a lot of interest to your page. But it was much easier to blend once I put that coat of clear gesso on and sealed the page. So I'm just giving this a quick dry. And I start looking for a focal image, and I remember that I had this sunflower stencil. This was a freebie off of someone's blog or some page. I've had it for a while. And the petals that were in that mandala stencil made me think of the shapes of the petals of this sunflower, which is why I chose it. I'm just stenciling with black acrylic paint, going high contrast here, black against the colorful background. And I'm just applying the paint with a makeup sponge. So we've colorized the stenciled materials and got it caught in the nooks and the crannies with drippage. And now we're just doing some contrasting stenciling, and I'm going to give that a dry. I noticed that my sunflower is floating, so I'm giving it a bit of grounding. And then you can tweak. If you missed out any stenciling here, you can just grab a brush and some black paint and fill it in. I want to bring out the petals of the mandala stencil here and the texture, kind of shade around this part of the stencil. So I'm using my Inktense pencil and tracing beside it, and then I'm grabbing a brush and just activating that with water. I want this to look grungy, but I want this to make these petals stand out. I think they play really well with the stenciled focal image that I put in the middle. Just activating it. I'm not trying to be precise here. I want it to look grungy. I want it to flow. I want it to get caught in the nooks and the crannies. Once you dry it, you can decide, do you want it darker? Do you want more? And then you can add more. So I'm liking that look. Then I grabbed the makeup sponge. It had black paint on it. I'm just rubbing it lightly over the texture, grunging it up a little bit, bringing out some of that texture. Loving the look. I'm going to continue with the other stenciled areas. And then activating it. Now, if you don't have Inktense pencils, you can use your Stabilo All pencil. You can use a charcoal pencil getting a similar effect. You can use watercolor pencils. Pit brush markers might also work. Try with what you have. Don't always assume we need to go buy new products. I mean, new products are great, but so I'm going to use my Inktense pencil and add it to any of the areas of that stenciled with the gesso areas that I want to bring out more. But I'm mindful of my focal image, the stenciled sunflower in the middle, is what I want to remain the focal image. So I don't want to make these parts stand out too much. So it's a bit of a dance. Then I grab my white Posca pen, and to make the focal image stand out, I am going to trace around it with the white. Now I'm not going on top of the black because I want to make this a little bolder, a little wider. So I'm going beside it and I'm going slower so I get a thicker line. I want to give weight to the focal image so it stands out from all the other interesting stuff that's in the background. Make sure you shake your Posca pens to make sure they are as opaque as they can be. I'm liking the way that makes that stand out just that little bit more. Try things. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. And sometimes you're lucky and you get to do both. That's what this was. This was a win and a learn because it's like, okay, now I know I can do this, or now I know this works. So I outlined the petal part with white. Now I didn't want this to stand out as bold as my focal image, so I'm going faster and more sketchy. So I want a little bit of that, but not as much as the focal image. And I think it was effective. It did what I wanted it to do, but my focal image still stands out the most. I grabbed some gold paint and I'm going to splatter. And I'm splattering now before I put the sentiment on because I don't want the splatter over top of the sentiment. Just makes it easier to do. The gold goes really well with the burnt sienna and the teals and the green tones that have come out by blending those colors. Now I'm edging the page and I grab my woodless charcoal pencil for this. So I'm just putting a line down and then I smudge it with my fingers and I get that diffused, chalky, grungy kind of look. This frames your page, or if you were doing a canvas, I would edge it the same way. So I grabbed my Grateful, Thankful, Blessed, and I picked the sentiment, gratitude changes everything, and I could have left it as a rectangle like that, but I wanted to eliminate some of the white. I didn't want that to dominate and take over the beautiful colors and textures and patterns that I've worked so hard for. So by getting rid of some of the white, I'm allowing the sentiment to be there but not take top billing. I play around with the placement of the sentiment before I make my final decision. And then opt to go with my original idea. And I use fluid matte medium to glue that down. Once it's dry, I outline it with my black Posca pen just to finish it off. I love how the stenciling that I did with the thickened gesso shows up on this page. Definitely something I will do again. And there is the finished page. Love the texture, love the patterns, love how the focal image goes with the mandala stencil. Not bad for starting out and not having an idea. Close-ups of the finished project follow. I hope you learned something. Let me know what that was. What technique are you going to try? Until next time, go get creative.